And it is no shade to Bonmatí, but there were other players, Caldente, Russo, that had better years in that calendar year based on the criteria. That to me is what is
Yeah.
absolutely crazy.
I think winning is important, right? I'm just kind of looking around like, okay, so what is the criteria? Is it that you're an individual baller or that you help your teams win, right? Because she lost in 2 finals this year and she still won the Ballon d'Or. So if it is about winning, well, then Marta helped her team to a shield and a championship and is still one of the best players to ever walk the face of the earth, is still scoring goals, is still performing on the international stage and winning with Brazil, right? When they're in cups and other competitions in their region. So for me, that Marta wasn't even in the top 10. I'm not saying she should have won the Ballon d'Or over Bonmatí, but I'm saying she wasn't even considered in the top 10. So I'm like, what is the criteria here? That's what's bothering me about it. Because for me, who wins the Ballon d'Or should be an unstoppable player. Like just no matter the game, no matter the match, whether you're on club level or international level, you should be incredibly hard to stop. That to me is Temwa Chawinga. It doesn't matter where she is playing. She is so incredibly hard to stop for club and for country. And just because she doesn't play for a top 10 country and we don't get to watch her on the regular basis like we do Bonmatí, but no, she didn't win with Kansas City last year, but she's still an incredible player. And again, to not be in the top 10 is just beyond me.
I mean, the one of the criteria is though team achievements, whether it's for club or country, it's finding success within your group. So someone else had talked about what about Linda Caicedo? What's going to happen there? Temwa Chawinga is another one of those players. If your team for club or country doesn't win any silverware, I think that automatically knocks you down a level. And that's the thing about the Ballon d'Or. It is not the top 2%. It is not the top 5%. It's the top 0.00001% of player. It comes down to the small margins ultimately in the end. And to me, Aitana Bonmatí not winning the Champions League with Barcelona and not winning the Euros with Spain takes her out of that conversation of the top.
Me also. I'm sorry to tell you. I just okay. Also, like for 3 years in a row, like she won it last year, won it the year before, but let's get somebody else in there. Like, let's be honest, she did not have her best year. She did not win everything that she could have.
I do think, there's been a lot of conversation though around the voting and how European heavy it is. And I do think that needs to be looked at it. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, there's 100 journalists that vote on the men's side, 50 on the women. Yeah. I'd love to know the sort of where they are from a global perspective and how fair that is across, accommodating all games, all different countries. How diverse is it? Looking across football as a global game, because that's what I think there's a lot of conversations about this being very European heavy, and I agree with that. And I think if you look at the top 10, it's all European players, and I think that definitely needs to be looked at for next year of how we're really making it fair across the game.
Yeah, so then you look at players like Marta and Temwa, they're at a deficit because they don't play for European teams, and it's like, it's almost like you have a leg up if you're playing in Europe because that's all that they're watching. I mean, even NWSL players that should have been considered were not given as much credit as well, And like I was thinking about this too, right? Bonmatí, she had 12 goals and 6 assists for Barca this last season, which is great. It's good. She's a great. I'm not denying that.
Absolutely.
But let me put it this way. The Liga F plays the most matches out of any other season comparable to any other league. More games than the French, more games than here at the NWSL, more than the Bundesliga. They play the most games. So you have the most opportunity to score the most goals.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's not also just about the stats. I think Marta is a really good example of a player that was absolutely given the short stick, considering the Ballon d'Or eligibility window was actually moved specifically to incorporate the Copa America Femenil final, in which Brazil and Marta played against Colombia, where Marta had 3 goals and an assist between the semifinal and the final, which counted towards the Ballon d'Or voting. She won the first and the second trophies ever for Orlando Pride, the Shield and the Championship. And to not come in the top 10 says to me that the L'Équipe, French football is not paying attention to the NWSL, not paying attention to anything outside of Europe. And it's always been mumbled about, like, okay, is this very Eurocentric? What's going to happen to me this year? Says they are not paying attention to anything.
100%. And even in the past, like Marta in her prime was, no doubt about it, the best player in the world, untouchable, has never won a Ballon d'Or. How is that possible?
Insane.
Yeah. You've won World Player of the Year 6 times, FIFA World Player of the Year, but no Ballon d'Or. I'm like,
yeah, the math isn't mathing for me on that one.
The math isn't mathing. And the footballing world puts such an emphasis on the Ballon d'Or, which is a French football award. That's where it has generated. And the shortlist is compiled by editorial staff of French football members, of L'Équipe, of UEFA in combination. So it is Eurocentric. If we wanted to make it, Jen, perhaps a little bit more global, try to level the playing field a little bit on the voting. How should we weigh the voting? Who should be involved?
Well, I mean, I like the idea of it being journalists because they are the ones that are across absolutely everything. I think I kind of touched on it earlier, and I'd love to know your ideas as well. But I think I personally would love to know where those journalists are situated and what do they comment on throughout the season. And if they are all over the world, even how many are in Europe and how many are in the rest of the world? Is it fair across, size and scale of leagues? I would just want to know more about the voting process. I think that's maybe what I'm trying to say. Because until we know the actual ins and outs, it's hard to kind of comment on how do you make a fair system. But I think, do you then include player votes? Do you then include managerial votes? Because that's how sort of domestic trophies are done within leagues and in domestic seasons. So do you incorporate that? Fan vote? Do you open up to a fan vote? There's so many different ways you can look at it, but right now the Ballon d'Or is journalists. So how would you open it up and make it more fair? For me, it's more a voting pool that involves more global scale. The
first step in doing that is to include 100 journalists that are voting in it, not just 50.
It also just seems like lazy voting. Like there was a huge tournament, the Euros, like massive tournaments. Like, is anybody watching? Like, they're just like, oh, I'm just going to go with the most popular name and like the most trendy name or who like I can think of quickest. Do you know what I mean? Like Bonmatí was on the edge of everybody's mouth this summer and has been for this past year. She's a wonderful player, but it's like, don't just refer back to that same player that was playing well. Like, let's really dive into it and think, do they deserve it? This is a massive award. I'm sure there's incredible bonuses that go along with it. Now your price tag as a player goes up. Like, this is an insane, very important award, and you shouldn't just be giving it away cheaply. And like, so this is another thing too. I'm like, who nominates the players that are chosen? Right? Like, what's the nomination process? Not necessarily the voting process, right? Because in August, everyone is listed, right?
Yep. So the shortlist was compiled by the editorial staff of France Football, members of the editorial staff of L'Équipe, and then a UEFA ambassador, and then usually the best juror from the last award. That's like typically how the shortlist is compiled for Ballon d'Or. I agree that there's not enough transparency on who is putting these names into the mix. Is there a vetting process, right? You even think about the men's side, how many names are on their short list, and the women's only has 30, and then we only have 50 voters. And yes, Ballon d'Or only included women in this in 2018. Like, this is an incredibly new award, yet we as footballers, as players, as media that covers it, still put a lot of weight in winning the Ballon d'Or. Right? Like, think if an American won this award this year or an NWSL player won the Ballon d'Or, it would be a huge talking point because there is a lot of emphasis on it. Maybe we need to not put so much emphasis on the Ballon d'Or, considering the voting and how they get to this process really isn't that important. And it's not that impressive. And it doesn't seem like they put that much thought into it.
Well, and that could be an issue too. Like, just coming in 2018, like I remember Marta in like 2011. I mean, if the Ballon d'Or was there then, like, she would have got it. But we're late to the party, and there was players that were just honestly playing like women against girls, like back then, like just dominating, like not even close. Like Marta in her prime would whoop Bonmatí
Yeah.
and Pernille Harbour and everyone else that's won it in the past 4 or 5 years.
I also do think it's probably very Europe. It feels European heavy because there was also a European tournament. It was the Euros, obviously the Copa as well, and there was been comments around that not enough exposure on that. We have to level that playing field. But then you have to think of Rapinoe winning it in 2019. That was off the back of back-to-back World Cups and her winning it. So when there's a more tournaments, the more sort of conversations there are. But this one more highlights to me the more exposure that needed to be on Brazil and Marta winning Copa, winning player of the tournament, and that not being more of a conversation around this Ballon d'Or for sure.
How much is the NWSL handicapped or at a disadvantage, considering that the voting consists of, or the year of eligibility window consists of just half of an NWSL season, McCall?
Well, let's put it this way. I just don't think the French and the Spanish like respect American football yet. It's why a lot of their players don't come play here yet. It's why they're not watching NWSL games and like why they're not included in these European votes and competitions for, individual trophies. They don't respect us. They're not paying attention. That's what I'm taking from this, is that I don't think the men on this board that are involved with selecting the nominees and the women are watching NWSL games that much. They're just not, because they don't think it's all that.
Yeah, I probably could have guessed that prior to yesterday and all this announcement of Ballon d'Or, that they're not watching, they're not paying attention. And not even this, but as Jen mentioned, Copa America, WAFCON, like they're not paying attention to these, especially when the Euros was happening this summer. But ultimately, that's like the grander scope of this whole thing. The fact that Aitana Bonmatí won this award is absolutely bonkers, considering the type of year that Mariona Caldente had, who was her teammate on Spain and was able to go to Arsenal and do it. Like, even if you say, okay, we are going to focus on Europe only, Alessia Russo, Mariona Caldente, those to me should have been the top two players in the finalists for this award who ultimately win it.
So if it's equatable, like on the men's side, right? Bonmatí, she's very similar to Messi. They both grew up in the Barcelona system for a very, very long time. She's only played for Barca. And when you're with the same club for a very long time, you're able to get your flow, find your feet, always have your max performances. You're not challenged in a different way. I'm like, girly, come to the NWSL. Try it out. See what happens, Miss Bonmatí. Come challenge yourself here, honestly. Because what happened to Messi when he left Barca? That's when he started getting challenging. And he didn't start scoring as many goals. We went to the French league, and then he came to America. Obviously, a little bit easier for him. But once he left Barca, he slowed down a little bit because he was challenged in a different way. Mm-hmm. So Bonmatí winning this award, yes, she's had good seasons, but she's been at the same club the entire time, which is a very big advantage.
Which is an even stronger point of saying Mariona Caldente should have won it. She went to a new club surrounded by brand new players and ends up winning the Champions League. For the record, no slight against Aitana Bonmatí. Exceptional player, exceptional footballer. But did she have the best calendar year? I think other players had it out ahead of her.